There's an extremely different view on Matthew 23 from the Messianic circle. In fact, that's one of the verses that actually led me out of Christianity. However, I still see that it does tend to kind of slam the oral law because it's or it seems like it does anyway. But as far as the Torah goes, because their comprehension of that is that the seed of Moses is like the bema seat, and they said that
listen. Let me just explain this. I don't want to get too complicated.
Okay.
I apologize for interrupting you.
Sure.
The Messianic movement started out as a movement in the early 70s, in the sense that we have it now. There were Hebrew Christian groups going back earlier than that. But in the early 70s, when the Messianic movement, that means this manifestation that we're observing, came out.
Okay.
It started out in typical evangelical Christianity. Okay, that's where it started. They just wanted to convert Jews, and they figured out this is the way to do it by creating Messianic congregations. Jews would be more open to conversion. What happens today is the Messianic movement has broken into 100 different sects. Anyone who's familiar with this knows exactly what I'm talking about. So you have now Messianic congregations that believe in the oral Torah and are against all the other Messianics and say they're heretics, but they don't believe in the oral Torah. And you have the old traditional Messianics who are Baptists who are going, you guys are out of your mind. What did we create? In fact, what most people don't know, we'll move on from here, is in the old days of the Messianic movement, Jews for Jesus, which is a Baptist mission to the Jews, actually didn't like the Messianic movement because they felt that, the Jews for Jesus, a Baptist mission. Martin Rosen, who was the founder of it, was an ardent Baptist, really against all this charismatic stuff, couldn't stand anything. He just wasn't. But so he said, you guys, there was a book he wrote informally called The Wisdom of Chairman Moshe. Not kidding. You could look it up online. But the point is that there's the Messianic movement. There are groups now in the Messianic movement in Texas, all over the United States, and all the world going, we believe in the Midrash and the Talmud and all that stuff, and all the other Messianics are no good. So let's move on from this topic. They don't have a basis for, they're all over the place because they're basically inventing their religion as they're moving along. So some Messianics group, we do believe in it. But what is obscene is those Messianics that attack and assault the sages of Israel, which normative Christians usually don't do. You know that in most churches, they have a lot of respect for the rabbis. I mean, a normal Baptist minister will say, doesn't mean they believe in it, but they usually will speak with some respect for the rabbis, and those Christian ministers and scholars who really know their stuff, like some of the people I've debated, like Craig Evans, Dr. Evans, they'll tell you straight away, what are you nuts? The oral law is all over the Christian Bible, which it is. So in truth, it is the Messianic movement that plays this little game. And that is, the game goes like this. When we can't find a verse in the Bible to support our position that Jesus is the Messiah, so what we're going to do is we're going to quote from the Talmud, which we say we don't believe in. We're going to scour rabbinic literature, particularly midrashic literature, Agadata, that type of literature which is not to be taken always in a hyper-literal sense. It's just a different genre of rabbinic literature. Therefore, it is very vulnerable to abuse. Therefore, it is very susceptible. People could easily twist it and make it say whatever you want it to say. So what they do is they play this game. They say, we don't believe in rabbinic Judaism. We're scriptural Jews. They're rabbinic Jews. But then when they need something to support Isaiah 83, bingo, they're right in the Talmud, swimming in it. So they pick it. If you believe that the Talmud's, holy, sacred, well, I got news for you. Not a single author in the Talmud believed in Jesus. So if you like the Talmud so much and you think it's Jewish and reliable, and you're going to quote the Midrash to prove that Jesus is the Messiah, well, guess what? Not a single author in the Talmud, the Mishnah, the Midrash, none of them believed in Christianity. All of them, with a single voice, said, Jesus is not the Messiah. So I would try to figure out which side of the fence you're on and stay there. If you don't believe in the Talmud, don't use the Talmud to prove that Jesus is the Messiah. And if you do believe in the Talmud, you've got a lot to talk about, okay? So I think we've exhausted that point. This is actually, I covered this in the oral law. There is, in volume 1 of Let's Get Biblical, I have an extensive chapter which goes into the history of the church's relationship with the oral Torah, and the development, because initially the earliest Christians, of course they knew there was an oral Torah. I mean, if you said it wasn't Torah, they'd think you're nuts. There are many, I give you many examples of it. It's beyond the scope of this broadcast. You could not understand many of the stories in the Gospels without an oral Torah. You just couldn't. And you actually have quotes of the Mishnah and Talmud in the Christian Bible. Now you're going, what? How could that be? Now that would be a good question, because the Mishnah was written, meaning codified, edited, and put together in about the year 200 CE. The Talmud is finally collated in about the year 600. I use the word edited and collated very deliberately because they're collating quotes that go back hundreds of years. So it doesn't mean everything that was written then was just edited and to the way we see it today. So as it turns out, you have statements in the Christian Bible, which I'm not going to go into now, that actually are word for word of what you would find in the Mishnah and the Talmud. Word for word, which means in some instances, the first written record of the oral Torah is found in the Christian Bible. Okay, and again, there's a whole chapter on it. I cover it. It's beyond the scope of this presentation.
Wow.
But the Messianic movement isn't monolithic. But the guys who play this game, they'll quote from the Medrash when it suits them, and they'll flaunt and wave.
I've seen that. I've experienced that all the time. Whenever
am I making this up? Am I inventing this?
You know, I've really experienced that. I mean, I've gone probably in several different times, probably about a half a dozen times in this past 6 months with people who are pretty scholarly with the New Testament, or so to speak. And then after only just a few minutes of really exposing their misinterpretations, they immediately start going, well, did you know that the Mishnah and that the Talmud says this, this, and this about the Messiah? And I'm thinking, really? You're going to take something that's already been disproved and try to requalify it with something that you don't even understand. And it's something, I mean, I'm studying it and I barely get it. You know, I need to study with you, Rabbi, or somebody else to help me gain better footing on this whole thing.
All right. So there's the answer. I mean, they've got to decide. What they do is they're playing a game. I mean, pick one or the other, but it's a complete hypocrisy to attack the rabbis. These, if they believe that the Medrash, see what they're saying, it's Jewish to believe in Jesus because there's something in the Talmud. Well, if the Talmud then has authority, everyone in the Talmud, without exceptions, clearly was not a Christian, rejected Christianity, and would have given their lives, and some of them did, not to become a Christian. So therefore, if in fact these rabbis have authority, that proves that Jesus is not the Messiah. Now, I would never, and people who listen to me know, I've never had a thought that I didn't publish. I'm kidding. But you know that I've pretty much, I mean, you could follow my teachings. It's very public. I can't hide what I teach. You're not going to find me quoting the Talmud when I'm addressing is Jesus the Messiah now. Why? Because I have respect for Christians. I know that they've been taught that they don't believe in it. So I don't quote it. That would be ridiculous. I mean, why would I quote it? And it is also silly for Christians to prove that Jesus is the Messiah from the New Testament. I mean, it's like proving Hinduism from the Bhagavad Gita. Well, I haven't accepted that. So let's move on here. But of course, this is...
That's great. Hey, it's stuff that needs to be covered though, and that's why people tune into this show and many others like it. They have questions.
This show in particular. This is the show they pull in. The other ones are just like this. This is the steak. I'm kidding. I'm joking. All the shows are great.
They are. They're fantastic.